Today is the 16th of September, 2014, and this is episode 145. This program is intended for informational and educational purposes only. Cryptocurrency is new, highly experimental, and we're not experts, just obsessed companions walking the road towards a more peer-to-peer future. Welcome to Let's Talk Bitcoin, a twice-weekly show about the ideas, people, and projects building the digital economy and the future of money. My name is Adam B. Levine, and today, let's push things forward. Stephanie recently caught up with Julia, the mind behind Brave the World. They talk liberty, its sometimes required declarations, and more. But first, I sat down with Alex of BitcoinComic.com to talk about their forthcoming graphic novel, The Legend of Satoshi Nakamoto, the swarm-enabled, counterparty-based coin that powers it, and what it all means. Enjoy the show. Today on Let's Talk Bitcoin, we're joined by Alex of BitcoinComic.org and one of the creators behind the upcoming graphic novel, The Hunt for Satoshi Nakamoto. Alex, thanks for joining us today.
Hey Adam, nice to meet you.
The Hunt for Satoshi Nakamoto. Culture in cryptocurrency is one of those things where, because, we're on the internet, really you see more of like repurposed memes than you do really material that's specifically about the cryptocurrency ecosystem. I'm wondering, how did this project come about? Was your background in art, or was it in Bitcoin, or both? Or, how did this happen?
My background is more in business and money. I've been studying money for a long time, since 2006. I've been thinking for a long time that I wanted to do a graphic novel about money. The thing with money is that most people perceive money as something really, really boring. And money really didn't become really interesting and cool for the mainstream until we had Bitcoin. Once I started getting into Bitcoin, and I had a couple of friends that were really into Bitcoin and that really told me, hey, you really need to get into this. This is really interesting. Started reading more, and I was like, wow, this is exactly what I wanted to talk about. And as things evolved over time, we had all the different and all the right elements. I was like, look, I'm gonna do a comic book about money, because one of the things we need to do to create a better society in the world for all countries is to raise more awareness about what money is, how money works, and how it influences our life. And I cannot see any better tool and method than Bitcoin, because for me, Bitcoin is money, but it has all the right elements to make it interesting for the mainstream. And that's why we decided to do the graphic novel about Bitcoin as an education tool about what money is.
What type of world are you portraying with this? Are you portraying the world as you see it now, or is this something that's a slightly fictionalized version so that it can, be a little bit more exciting than maybe the everyday?
Our role model really was like Matrix the movie, because one of the great things that the Matrix the movie achieved is like we have a whole action story which is attractive and interesting to everyone. But there's many different aspects that are included in the movie that have messages that are relevant about how the world operates on a philosophical level. And we try to do something similar, but in the present time. So the present time in the comic book is 2013, and where we combine different characters that during the plot they explain basically what Bitcoin is. So we basically have the main character. His name is Bob, and Bob, as you know, is a name that is usually used as a placeholder in cryptography. And then we have the mob chasing Bob, because one of the guys, he's the son of one of the important mafia bosses in the city. He wants to be noted by his dad, and he thinks that if he steals the Bitcoin fortune from Satoshi Nakamoto, that he will be able to shine. And through the whole story, there's also like some freelance agents from the NSA that follow the storyline. And through all these interactions of these different groups, we basically explain many different things. We basically explain how Bitcoin works, what is a public address, what is a private address, why Bitcoin does exist, why it's important, and how fiat money operates, and also the different perspectives about some people that think that with Bitcoin it's completely anonymous and that's really great, and some people then say, no, that's not the way it is, because some people think like that. So all different kind of point of views. But I mean, our main goal really through that storyline is then to transmit those different viewpoints. So when you finish reading the book after 60 minutes, 90 minutes, you really have a very good general sense of what happened in the last 5 years, these in the headlines and the general themes and why they're important.
So this is more of an educational tool, really, for bringing people who are kind of outside of it and who've maybe looked at it. And again, it's that, getting back to what you said at the beginning, it's the money, the perception is that it's boring unless you have a bunch of it, and then it's more interesting. So what you're trying to do with this book is make it so that kind of all of that stuff that normally you'd have to crawl through forums and do all, and learn hard things, and instead make the experience basically the same as reading a comic book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially, what we're trying to do, the reason why we're doing it through a comic book is because comic books or images or paintings have an incredible power, because you can just look at an image and say, oh, I understand many, many different things, because they transmit emotions, they transmit ideas, they transmit attitudes. And that's really difficult to transmit in a book, I don't know, a 100-book page or 200-book page. But through a comic book, you can package the power of words and the power of images, and through that really speed up the learning process of what it means. We don't explain it to the world like that. I can explain it to Bitcoiner because he understands Bitcoin and he understands what we try to achieve and what is as a community. But when we talk in general to the general public, we won't present it like that. We will just present it as an amazing adventure story where we explain this amazing thing, which is Bitcoin, that fluctuated a lot in price, and that where you had all kinds of different things, a lot of adventure. And in between, we will bring up all the fundamental stuff, which is technology, or the blockchain technology is revolutionary. And we believe it, I think we all believe it will change the way we live our lives in the next 5 to 10 years. And how we also need to understand how money works and how Bitcoin allows you to be your own central bank. You basically manage your money and you don't need to rely on anyone else to do that. So there's plenty of amazing stuff that this technology is allowing us. And fundamentally also the issue with Bitcoin is that, at least when I talk to many Bitcoiners, and I guess you had the same experiences, that trying to explain it to someone is very, very complex, because you need to explain many, many different things and you need to understand many different subjects. It brings together two of the worst things that people usually have a hard time to understand, which is finance and technology. And then you combine it and you call it Bitcoin. So I think through the comic book, Bitcoiners around the world, they will really have a tool to share the passion with their loved ones. They will basically be able to say, hey, my dad, my mom, my children, my friends, my loved ones, or if I'm a company, my customers, I can share this tool with you, which is really fun to read, which is very exciting. And just by reading that, a lot of questions will come up in your mind, and you will want to know more. And then you come back to me and I will share it with you. Our end game of what we're trying to achieve here is really to grow the community and raise awareness about money, because there are many different subjects in the world that we really need to work at as world citizens. But I have made it my goal to try to do as much as I can on the subject of money. There are many other subjects I'm interested in, but I think if we all achieve together to make progress in the subject of money, that would be really great, because I think we can really improve a lot of things for the world.
So this project has been underway for a while. You mentioned that the book itself is set in 2013. How long have you been underway on this project, and can you tell us a little bit about the other members of the team involved?
Sure. We started working on the project in 2013. I met 2 years ago. I've been into comic books for a long time, since I'm a child, but I started reading really more of them like 5 years ago. And 2 years ago, I went to the biggest comic show in Europe, which takes place in Angoulême, which is in France. And there I met a Spanish comic book producer. We just became friends. We met and we said, oh, look, it's nice to talk. And then at some point I was like, oh, look, I always wanted to do this thing. And there's this thing called Bitcoin that I've been studying now for a while. We really should do something. And he was like, I explained him the whole philosophical aspects of it. And he was like, yeah, this is really cool. Let's do it together. And he introduced me to Josep Busquet, which is a Spanish scriptwriter. And Josep introduced José Ángel García Ares, who's a Spanish illustrator. And the three of us, we started working on the project basically. And initially we had like different avenues or ideas about how we could construct the story. But we ended up with this adventure story because we were like, look, if we really want to reach the mainstream, but at the same time make it also interesting for Bitcoiners, let's go down through that path. And this is the three of us. I've been mainly working on the technical script and really making sure that we can encapsulate in an understandable but correct way what Bitcoin means. Josep, he mainly worked on the storyline, like the adventure story, how should it build up, what is happening, and I did fill in all the different gaps.
You know, it's interesting that this is early enough in the life cycle of Bitcoin that you're actually able to take this, very much an independent production and call it the hunt for Satoshi Nakamoto, because nobody's actually done that yet. So, what are next steps as far as your project is concerned?
right now our goal is to make this as popular as possible and get the whole community of Bitcoin behind this. And as I said, I mean, we have different stages right now. We are promoting this in a crowd sale campaign together with a Swarm, which is a really cool Bitcoin 2.0 crowdfunding company. And we are their first project. And with Swarm, you can do loads of really interesting stuff. I mean, what we will do is we will have a redeemable COMICCOIN, which basically will allow you to redeem the comic book against it, which is nothing amazing, but it's interesting to do that. But we will also issue COMICCOINs with every person that will fund the comic book, and they will get COMICCOINs. And through the COMICCOINs, we will try to arrange a voting system where they will be able to vote on the cover of the comic book, on the title of the comic book. And the third thing we're trying to arrange, and we're still waiting for final confirmation, but it seems that this will go ahead. We will be able to share a small percentage of the net revenue of all the derivative intellectual property. That basically means if someone comes along and says, I want to do all the characters of the comic book and I pay you 50,000. So then we could share some of that net revenue with all the people holding COMICCOINs, for example. And so we're really experimenting that together with Swarm on those things. And I was really excited about that because when I met Swarm the first time, person to person, was in London when I did a pre-presentation at Coin Summit, and we really liked each other, and they were really excited about the project, and they really understood what we were trying to achieve. And since then, we've been working this, and we're the first project, and I think I really wanted to do it with the Bitcoin company, not do just in brackets a standard Kickstarter campaign, because I think this is something really that we need to have to buy in from the Bitcoin community. And if we have to buy in from the Bitcoin community, then hopefully we will then afterwards, if we're successful, also get the buy-in from the general comic book reader population in the world, which I think is an interesting target to grow the community, but also to the general population, because hopefully this will become a tool that helps everyone to learn in Bitcoin in a fun and easy way as an entry system to the Bitcoin world.
Okay, so you said a lot of stuff there. Let's go through that a little bit and break it down. You said that your project is being enabled by Swarm, which previously they have a main webpage at swarmcorp.com, but where I found your project was actually swarm.co. So as you mentioned, you're the first project up there. Let's talk about what a normal user would actually do with one of these COMICCOINs, right? So what is the price to support where I would get a comic book from this, where I'm essentially pre-ordering a comic book with Bitcoin?
There are three general different levels. I mean, the first basic level is you get a standard copy, that's how we call it, of the comic book for 0.05 Bitcoins. Uh-huh. And that will also give you some COMICCOINs, which will allow you to participate in voting and on the intellectual property side of things.
Now, let me ask about the COMICCOINs. With the COMICCOINs, are these redeemable for a comic book, or are they something that I would not redeem, that I would hold in order to do what you're saying? Or is it both? I can choose to redeem it for a comic book, or I can hold it speculating like you're suggesting.
There are two things to it. I mean, actually, we are issuing three different kinds of coins depending on what you decide to fund. One is which is a coin called Comic Book, which is basically just a redeemable coin. So as soon you get it now because you're participating in the pre-sale, and then once the comic book becomes available in November, then you just redeem it. You tell us, okay, I want to receive it at this address, and we send it to you. But together with this funding of the purchase of the comic book coin, you also receive a certain number of COMICCOINs. And those COMICCOINs, you hold them. You hold them in your counter wallet, which is at counterwallet.co. You can arrange a counter wallet, and there you hold then your COMICCOINs. And once you fund it with Bitcoins, you get COMICCOINs in exchange there.
Okay, so there are three types of coins here. There is comic book, which is redeemable for one comic book. And does that include shipping? Is that specific to an area of the world, or is it global?
It includes shipping, but the main target is really the American market and the European market. But if we get some fancy orders from countries that we didn't expect, we will try to accomplish that too, I had one order from a friend the other day in Bolivia. So he said, look, I mean, Bolivia, really unreliable post system. So he did send me the Bitcoins. He said, look, please arrange this for me. Once it's ready, I'll send you a DHL number so you can send it to me, because you cannot send it via normal post. So that's like an extreme case. Okay,
so but under normal circumstances, your intention with this is, so long as it's not wildly, unsuccessful for you, you're gonna the token includes shipping. Okay. So okay, so you've got the comic book coin that is one delivered copy of the comic book. You've got COMICCOIN, which is like you said, it's like a voting token, and then it also is going to potentially give some sort of intellectual property dividend.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what we're aiming for.
Okay, and then Comic Special is the special edition version of comic book, which is, so this is the hardbound, but it's also redeemable and also includes shipping. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay, so this is really interesting. I really have been waiting for some of these redeemable tokens to come out. It'll essentially let people who aren't necessarily interested in having lots of copies of the comic book, but who either, have educational initiatives going on, because like you said, this is intended as an educational thing, or are just looking to profit themselves. What about someone who would be interested in buying like 100 comic book tokens? Are you building in any sort of like reseller level for this?
We have created like a bulk system, purchasing system, like for companies. So if a Bitcoin company comes around and says, I really want to share this with my employees and my customers, so that we can give them a special pricing for that if they say, I want to buy 50 copies. 100 copies, whatever they decide.
See, that's really interesting to me because, again, we run Let's Talk Bitcoin here. And so the opportunity then to be able to buy a token like you're talking about, where we don't actually ever have to take possession of any physical inventory, don't have to worry about any shipping whatsoever. We just have to say, okay, is it worth it to us based on the discount that you're giving us to buy 100 copies of this and then market it through display advertisements on our website to people who have both LTB coin and Bitcoin? This is a really advanced campaign compared to a lot of the ones that I've seen. Why did you decide to go this way? Is there any process that went in here, or was it just you got together with the Swarm guys and was like, that's the natural thing that we should do?
It was really the second thing. We got together with the Swarm guys. I think the Swarm guys, they really have an amazing concept there that they're trying to build out. I've been really busy the last 12 months and just building the comic book. But once I did get together with the Swarm guys, they really were like, look, you can do all these different things. I was like, wow, this is really cool. And but my main idea was just basically to do this for the Bitcoin community, and that's why I wanted to do it with Swarm.
How has your experience been working with Swarm, just generally speaking? Because you are the first project to roll out, and looking at the page, it's pretty user friendly. That's kind of a hard problem, as we like to say. In crypto, is actually turning these into things that people can understand and use fairly easily. One of the things that I noticed is that you're offering discounts to people who have Swarm, but not actually accepting Swarm. How was that a process that you were involved with at all, or was that just all on the Swarm guys?
It was really on the Swarm guys. I mean, what we did was the first pre-sale campaign for the Swarm community, but I think it's also like the whole Swarm community, or the people that participate in the Swarm funding in June, July, they're also still part of this learning process about saying, okay, how can we build this? What are all the cool things we can do here? And we still, I think Swarm and myself, we're both learning as we go on many things. As more campaigns will come in, and there will be even more interesting things that Swarm will be able to do. But I think for both of us, for Swarm and for the Bitcoin comic, this is really something really exciting because, I mean, for us, it was really about working with the community, and working with the Swarm guys has been really easy. They work very hard, and they really try to do the best. I think they're never happy. They always want more, but they really will get there, I think.
Well, fantastic, Alex. It sounds like a really great project, and we look forward to hearing more from you. Are there any areas that we haven't hit that we should before we end?
I think it's interesting to mention that the comic will be published in English, and that's part of the whole campaign. It will be published in Spanish. We also get it published in Polish. And anyone listening to this, or if you know anyone who's interested in supporting us and finding publishers around the world, then please get in touch with me, because it's really cheap. Once the product is done, it's really cheap to translate and arrange everything. And we would really like to achieve to get this published in as many languages as possible, to reach out to as many people as possible also. So the Polish edition was just because I met a really friendly Polish guy in London. I told him, look, we're looking for publishers. If you know anyone, he said, look, let me look into it. I'll get back to you. And a month later, he came back and said, I have a publisher for you. Please arrange everything. And now we confirmed this week, and we have it in Polish too. So I hope we will get as many languages as possible.
Are there any other types of help that you're looking for at this point? Or if people, is there anything, if someone wants to get involved with what you're doing, are there ways that people can help further?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now, we have one volunteer working with us. Manjal Shah, he's working at the Swarm office. He's running our corporate campaign, so he's contacting Bitcoin companies to get in to support a comic book, to buy copies, or to get involved in any other way they may like to. Also, like any Bitcoin media or any contacts with publishers or media, we really try to make as much noise as possible about this. And we also hope that the Bitcoin comic will also contribute in a positive way about how Bitcoin is perceived in the overall population, because I think graphic novels are perceived as something positive and cool, and that and we hope that we'll achieve it. We actually, Joel from Swarm presented to Xapo last week, and they really liked it a lot. I wasn't there, but he presented it at them during lunch, and they really liked it a lot. We also have received a donation today of 0.5 Bitcoins from the CEO of Bitstamp. And I don't know. So there's really cool stuff happening, and people really like it, I think. And so, yeah, anyone who wants to get involved, she can contact me at tello@bitcoincomic.org, and we will find something.
So the Hunt for Satoshi Nakamoto comes out in November, and the crowdfunding campaign ends the end of September?
14th of October, yeah.
The 14th of October. Okay, great. So anybody who wants to... Is there a direct URL for that? Is it just swarm.co these days?
Swarm.co/COMICCOIN, and then you're at the campaign. There are 2 videos on the top. You have an explanation video for myself, explaining what we are doing. There's also the trailer video. You also have a list of all the different rewards. Well, I didn't mention, but that might be interesting. We also have like a cameo appearance in the comic book. So if you're really interested, you could become up the storyline by having yourself appearing in the comic book, and everything is there on that website.
Bitcoin, very early user, very influential user, Hal Finney recently passed away. And you had mentioned to me that there's a tribute in your... Can you talk about that?
I mean, we're heading to the Hal Finney already, like 5 months ago when we were creating this story. We were quite inspired by the book from Stephen Levi, Crypto. And in that book, Stephen Levi mentions a message that Hal Finney did in Crypto at a time in the 90s, where he would be willing to pay like $100 if anyone would achieve to decrypt the message. So the decrypted message is part of the comic book. There's a certain scene where the message appears, and Hal, he's also part of Appendix, where he appears with other 100 Bitcoiners from around the world, where you, Adam, you're also included. We have decided also, since he passed away recently, we also decided to dedicate the comic book to him, because he was a really important figure to the development of PGP, but also to Bitcoin together with Satoshi Nakamoto in the early days.
Okay, terrific. Well, thanks very much for your time. We look forward to your continued progress in the space. This episode is brought to you by CryptoKit.com. We'll be starting full sponsorships again soon, so stay tuned. Today's magic word is brave. B-R-A-V-E. Brave. You've got until the 20th of September to visit letstalkbitcoin.com and enter the magic word for your share of the listener rewards. Back to the show.
Welcome to Let's Talk Bitcoin. This is Stephanie here, and I'm talking with a goddess of liberty, Julia Toriansky. Hi, Julia.
What an introduction.
Well, it's all true, I assure you, because I know Julia personally, and she's really awesome. She's a very productive lady. She's got a popular YouTube channel and goes around promoting lots of ideas related to freedom and liberty, but also recently has taken on a project to, what do you call it, Julia? Maybe bring Bitcoin back to its roots a little bit more, remind people of what Bitcoin actually was intended to be.
Yeah, get back to the ethos of Bitcoin and its libertarian anarchistic roots and liberating roots, if you don't want to label it. And I think we've strayed away from it. And I mean, with the Bit license and all this headbutting within the community, people trying to keep Bitcoin neutral, which is a farce, in my opinion. Yeah, so the project is called Declare Bitcoin's Independence, or the Declaration of Bitcoin's Independence.
Cool. Well, we're going to talk about that. But first of all, just for people who aren't familiar with your work, you've got a YouTube channel. I think maybe that's the media that you're best known for. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I do a lot of anarchist-related videos. Anything that I find to be a worthwhile issue or cause. Recently, I've been promoting Ross Ulbricht's case and the Silk Road. I do a bit of interviewing, and I do my own original content in relation to anarchism, libertarianism, and I've been delving into Bitcoin quite heavily lately. And the channel is Brave the World channel on YouTube.
Yeah, people may know you from your basic Bitcoin bitches video.
Yeah.
I think that one made the rounds in Bitcoin circles for sure. How did you first find out about Bitcoin?
Silk Road.
How did you become an anarchist or find out about liberty?
Well, I became an anarchist through the process of elimination, I guess. Nothing else made sense. I was a libertarian first, naturally, but I ended where most people that take on this thought process end up, which is anarchy.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to think everyone's born an anarchist, but then they kind of get away from it through school and, living in culture and stuff like that. So cool. Okay, Brave the World channel on YouTube. And tell me about your recent project, the Bitcoin Declaration of Independence. It started out as an article, is that right?
Yeah, there's a really great blockchain to this. And the blocks are people, and they all link it together in this beautiful series of events or maybe trigger points that woke me up to what Bitcoin really is. Because people know Bitcoin and people understand Bitcoin, but I think most people really understand it on just a technical level or just a surface level or just an investment opportunity level. They don't really get it. And I was a basic Bitcoin bitch too, so, no judgment. But this was my path to revelation. And what happened was I went to the Bitcoin conference in Toronto. And I know Cody Wilson, so we were hanging out, and he introduced me to Amir Taki. And Amir actually won the hackathon there, so that was really dope. And he and I just clicked immediately. And I mean, I'm not surprised because I get along with Cody, he gets along with Amir, and then I just really got along with Amir. And he ended up asking me to go to New York. And also, I actually skipped one of the chains. I watched Andreas Antonopoulos' talk at the conference, and I just ran in randomly. I was going to leave early, actually, and I ran in and I watched him speak, and everything he said just excited me and hit the nail on the head, and I was so inspired, and I couldn't understand why. So that kind of started it. Then I went to New York with Amir to visit Charlie Shrem. When we hung out with Charlie, and I just listened. I just listened to them talk. And little things they said, very specific little things they said about, the origins of Satoshi and the way that he released certain things and the certain things that Satoshi said, things I just never knew about. And also their own journey within the Bitcoin realm. And this idea started to come out. And I didn't know what to do with it. And then my friend from CryptoBiz magazine, Nathan Wozniak, emailed me and he says, "Oh, can you do an article for us? I know you've been hanging with Amir and Shrem." And they wanted an expose or something.
They wanted you to spill the gossip.
Right. And instead, I wrote the basic Bitcoin Bitches script. It just poured out of me. And I put that out, and it got, mixed reviews because people perceived it to be aggressive. But I was kind of making fun of myself in the video, which people don't realize. So after that, I wanted to do something more serious, and I wrote the declaration because I thought, like I said earlier, there's this turmoil within the community of people who basically want Bitcoin to just be a neutral technology, and people who realize that Bitcoin has the potential for a humanitarian political cause, which inherently is revolution or evolution. So I tend to side with those people because everything is political, and to claim otherwise is incredibly naive.
Yeah. So tell me about the Bitcoin Declaration of Independence video.
Oh, God. That was such an adventure, and it kind of came together by itself because I wrote the article, and it got a really good response. And I mean, all the people that I respected both liked my Basic Bitches video and they liked the declaration. So not to pander to authority figures, but when you respect somebody and somebody inspired you and they give you good feedback about your work, you're like, yes, I'm on the right track. And what I believe is shared amongst people that I respect. That's amazing. I didn't want to do a talking head video of me declaring Bitcoin's independence. Who am I? Like I don't give myself that much credit. So I thought, I was hanging out with my friend Victoria Van Eyck, and she does writing for Bitcoin Magazine, and she's a Bitcoin evangelist as well. And I'm like, oh, why don't you read a line from this? Let's see. So she read a line from it, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So I was gonna go on this big trip because I was gonna do Bilderberg in Copenhagen. So I went there, and after that I went and saw Amir in Barcelona, and I filmed him reading lines from it, and it looked so good, not like good, but soulful and sincere, and I felt I was on the right track with something there. And I mean, I guess that was the seeding factor for me when he did his lines. So then anybody that I felt was on my page about Bitcoin, I reached out to. And it really started to come together when I went to Porkfest at the end of my trip, because I met, a big portion of the Bitcoin community, including you, Stephanie. And I got all these amazing people that I wasn't even exposed to be in this thing. And I didn't have to even try very hard, because some of them have read my declaration, and some of them read it on the spot and liked it. And even Patrick Byrne was there. And, people ambushed him a lot. But then as soon as I read him a line from the declaration, he was like, yes, who are you? I'd love to be part of this. And that really, struck a chord with me, because that's just work speaking for itself. And it's not about me, and it's not about them. It's about the essence of the message of the declaration. And I really hope people get it, and I really hope people don't misinterpret it as being preachy or, up on a high horse, or I don't know. I mean, I should stop basing things on Reddit comments, but I want to make it clear, like, I understand that Bitcoin isn't perfect and it's not anonymous and this and that, but this is like declaring its potential. And it's not just Bitcoin, it's more about the idea of Bitcoin and the blockchain technology and other cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I have to say, I saw a rough cut of the video, and it was incredibly authentic. There were just a lot of people who maybe have been there since the beginning in Bitcoin, or maybe have come along a little bit later, but they clearly care about the direction of Bitcoin and where it's going, and they care about freedom and making those two things align with each other and keeping the integrity of Bitcoin's core values.
That was what was so wonderful about this project, to see that people actually care, that they actually really deeply care about this. And this is how I divide the community, okay? Bitcoin and the blockchain technology is a forest. And you're either standing on a hill looking at the forest, and it's the taiga forest, it's the biggest forest, and you can't see the end of it, and you can't see the beginning of it, and it's so vast, and you can't comprehend it, and you don't really get it, and you don't know what to do. You don't know whether to walk away or to go into the forest. And then there's the other people who are in the forest, and all they can see is trees, and they can't get out. They're way too deep in. There's no going back. But they also don't know what to do, and they also don't know what direction to go, and they don't know where the forest leads. So that's how I describe the community right now. It's totally half and half. The people outside the forest and the people right in there. And I am really lost.
So what do you think about just maybe recent events that have happened within the Bitcoin world? Tell me more about your involvement with Ross's case, if you have any, or tell me about your thoughts on this bit license thing that everybody's talking about.
Well, shout out to Ross, and I hope he's doing okay. And I look forward to the trial, because I look forward to a good outcome. And there's not much more I can say about that. I've just been trying to promote a positive public image for him, because his image has been smeared. And the things that they're trying to charge him with are ludicrous, and they are a symbol of what's come in the future regarding not only Bitcoin, but the regulation of the internet. So it's about all our freedom. It's about being taxed for all exchanges of medium, online and offline. It's about privacy, well, the lack of. It's about general freedom, really, because that is how we live and interact now. Everything is online, and they're trying to control everything that we do online, and it's ludicrous. And now, if you're participating in systems like Tor or Bitcoin, we haven't reached this yet, but if he loses the case, you're going to be perceived as a criminal by default.
Yeah.
That's the risk here.
Yeah, the presumption of guilt before innocence is really a huge thing. And I think a lot of people who have been in Bitcoin for a while have already sort of experienced that. I don't know if you've tried to withdraw Bitcoins from Coinbase lately or done anything like that, but sometimes you'll get asked, what is the nature of this transaction? And we're sending a report on you to the government. You have to tell us what you're using these for and how you got these Bitcoins in the first place.
Right. Now we have to be smart consumers and get away from, any entity that does this, that does similar things that the government does to us, because then what's the point?
Yeah, I agree with that. Even if it's a convenient service, there could be a trade-off with your personal liberty that you may not be willing to make. Chase Bank has apparently banned cash deposits into accounts that are not yours. They're going to look at your ID because people selling on local Bitcoins have been accepting cash deposits into their accounts, and they don't like that. And of course, Chase is one of the most notoriously famous banks for denying bank accounts to people who work in certain industries, adult industry or whatever, under this Operation Choke Point thing. And now you live in Canada, but I'm sure you experience a lot of this stuff firsthand.
Canada was the first country to officially declare the taxation of Bitcoin. So, yay. I mean,
right, in a sarcastic sense.
Right. People really, this is our opportunity to actually make choices. And it's really sad because people would rather be guilty than responsible, okay? They'd rather have the government declare their guilt and then they're absolved of all responsibility for themselves. Guess what? That age is dying and you have to take responsibility for everything you consume and everything you subscribe to. Like I said, everything is political. And if you're going to claim neutrality but still participate in the real world, you're a hypocrite.
Just to go back to something that you were referencing before about Ross's case, there are some really disturbing implications in the case and in the briefs for just general freedom, regardless of what you think about Ross or about the Silk Road, which he is alleged to have operated. There's some stuff in there about all property being considered money now. So because Bitcoin is a virtual type of property for tax purposes in the US, that's what they claim anyway.
It's a medium of exchange, right? That's what it is.
Well, it is a medium of exchange, but it's classified as a type of property, so it's treated as barter. So essentially, what's in this case would make all types of property elements of money laundering or implements of money laundering, potentially.
Even trade and barter. So everything's taxable, everything.
Yeah.
Which is, insane. And that ties into the BitLicense stuff again. But the most important thing about the Ross Ulbricht case is, I think, the liability charge, because it does transferred intent. So basically, if he loses, then they're going to push forward a law that makes everybody liable for everything. So your internet host will be liable for your action online because they're providing you with internet. So what's that going to do? That's going to make Bell say, oh, well, we don't want to be held liable for anything, so we're going to monitor you and we're going to screen you and we're going to block certain websites. And that's a huge invasion of privacy. See the chain? So that's the most terrifying thing. And then with privacy, they can see what they can tax because they know everything that you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's an issue with Bitcoin, just the idea that privacy is not really built into the protocol at a fundamental level. You could say that it sort of is because the addresses are pseudonymous, but there are real issues with traceability of Bitcoin and financial privacy, which is important for many different reasons. What if you, for instance, have an abusive ex-spouse and you don't want them to see what you're doing with your money? What if you don't want your employer to know that you're buying certain types of birth control or something like that? I mean, the list goes on and on of reasons that you would want financial privacy, but really you don't need a reason at all. It's basically a fundamental human freedom thing that you should be able to use the fruits of your labor in the way that you choose and have the ability to keep that information private if that's what you want to do.
Well, I think on a person-to-person level, it is pretty anonymous because you can just switch up your addresses, and it would take a lot of police work to try and link your identity to your address if it's just person-person level. But if a government agency is trying to track you down, they will, right? So I think that's where the pseudo-anonymity comes from, because if I'm getting abused by my husband, I can just switch up my address, and how will he know that that's linked to me, and I can get a different wallet somewhere. So I think it's great that way. But yeah, like you said, it's not built into the protocol, and you can trace people. You can link them to their addresses.
Yeah, and you have to be really conscious as a Bitcoin user to really keep it private. Like, it's just so easy to kind of taint addresses with clues that reveal who you are, especially when you have these intermediaries like Coinbase and so forth that have records.
And who's the government going to target? They're going to target people accepting a lot of money or sending a lot of money, well, Bitcoin. So, I mean, that's very easy to trace. I was thinking the other day, maybe at its early stages, this transparency of Bitcoin is a good thing because it forces people to be brave, right? I mean, I would like the option, and I think the option is being worked on, like with Zero Cash. Peter Todd is helping out with that, and Dark Wallet, and even that's not perfect. But there are these steps, and it's exponential progress in this technology because it's such an early technology. We're seeing projects every month sprout up, right? So I'm not too worried about the anonymity side. I think it will happen, but I'm kind of wondering, is it a good thing that it's transparent right now? Because it forces people to be brave. Now, if people are cowards and they don't step up and say, we want our financial sovereignty, then that'll backfire. But another good thing about transparency, if Bitcoin is adopted and things like the banking institutions start using it, then we'll know if the banking institutions are doing fraud or committing laundering or supporting offshore cartels and buying drugs or shipping guns into the country. And well, if the politicians are using Bitcoin, that's the transparency that's wonderful about it. And right now, all of these entities can use more secretive means, but with Bitcoin, it'll be transparent. So if anybody should be using Bitcoin, it should be governments and banks.
So do you think it's possible to be a conscious consumer, essentially, and be mindful of your financial privacy as Bitcoin becomes more, quote, mainstream, right? Because it's experiencing a lot of growth right now, and we're starting to see these services crop up, like Circle, for instance, that's supposed to bring Bitcoin mainstream, but with a lot of sacrifice in terms of the privacy and anonymity potential that Bitcoin has. Do you think it's going to be possible as time goes forward to keep a semblance of your privacy with Bitcoin?
Well, the beautiful thing about markets is that they're competitive. So Circle can do whatever the hell they want. But as long as there's somebody else out there that's working towards privacy, and there are, I'm going to subscribe to them, and I'm going to, if I ever have enough money, I'll support a project like that. And I'll promote projects like that. And that's what's so great about this community. It's almost like symbiotic in nature. We kind of fund each other. And there are outside big boy funding. And some of them, they were a surprise to me, the people that have funded certain projects. Because you assume everyone has this kind of sinister idea of this businessman, blah, blah, blah. But these people have been around the block and they have experienced regulation firsthand. And believe me, most businessmen, especially in this sphere, especially in the Bitcoin space, in the techie space, they're not for regulation, which means they're not for big government, which means they're for free markets. And that ties nicely into the libertarian anarchistic philosophies. So I was pleasantly surprised last time I spoke to a few of these people who I assumed to be people who wanted regulation and people who, the people outside of the forest.
Yeah, I mean, I know there are some for sure, but sometimes what I see is people that I'm kind of surprised about speaking out almost in favor of regulation. Like I read on Let's Talk Bitcoin a little while ago, Eric Voorhees' piece where he wrote in response to this New York State Bitcoin license thing, the Bit license. He called people out by name, basically, Bitcoin business owners who were basically supporting this disgusting piece of legislation. And he was like, dudes, come on, I can get it if you're scared. If you're scared to speak out against this because you're afraid to be targeted, that's one thing. But you don't have to come out and openly support it. That's just going way too far. And it's not going to protect you. I mean, just look at the case of Charlie Shrem and what happened to him. He was actually working with
Ben Losky, yeah.
Yeah, Ben Losky, the person who wrote this Bit license proposal. And Charlie thought, I can work within the system and kind of make these regulations work for me, and I'll educate him about Bitcoin. And where did that get him?
How can people not learn from his mistake?
Well, I think it's not being said, and that's why I'd like to say it. Working within the system, the political system, it's really not possible to make any type of meaningful change, which is why I think it's really important just to go completely outside it and sort of take this Skype approach, where in the early days of Skype, which we're actually using to do this interview, you can say what you want about Skype now. It's certainly gone in an anti-freedom direction with all the spying. But in the early days, Skype was basically a direct competitor to these telecom companies that were outdated dinosaurs. And the government wanted to regulate them as though they were a phone company, and that would have meant all these extra things that they would have had to do, and they basically couldn't have continued to operate and offer their service for free to people to have them make calls around the world over the internet. And what they did was take the approach of, look, we're not a phone company. We're something completely new and different. The original founder of Skype was saying, look, Bitcoin people, listen to me. Learn from history here. Don't say, oh, yes, we're a bank, regulate us as though we are a bank or an existing financial institution. You should be trying to find ways around these laws and finding the loopholes and the ways that make it so that you're not classified as these existing institutions, because Bitcoin just doesn't fit in with that. It's not that.
Let's make something clear. Bitcoin, well, the technology, the blockchain technology. The blockchain is a protocol. Protocol is language. Language is speech. And speech is supposed to be free in America. And what's the internet?
Supposed to be.
It's a protocol. And what is it used for? Information and communication. Speech. So putting any bans or regulations on the internet or the extension of the internet with blockchain is in direct violation of free speech. It's that simple. That's it. These people who are pandering to the state, I'm sorry, they're going to be the first ones screwed, because everyone else is going to go and do things in a new and imaginative way. So I'm sorry. I wish they would just realize it and put up a fight.
I think there's probably a lot of fear involved. If you run a Bitcoin business and the state is looming over you, trying to regulate you, claiming that you're going to be charged with all these felonies if you don't comply with whatever they're trying to make you do, it's really scary. And it's okay to acknowledge that. But pandering to the state isn't necessarily going to help your case. The state's kind of going to do whatever it's going to do. And you don't have to give your moral support to it. That's the thing.
Yeah, as Amir Taki likes to say, don't be a bootlicker.
Right. So I take it you totally support the new Bit license, Julia, huh?
Yeah. I support it. And I'm looking forward to seeing I think it's already begun, but the stream, the waterfall of companies moving out of New York. That's what they should do. I think every single startup and existing Bitcoin business needs to move out of New York. And then they'll be left with what they had before. And bye-bye. Stone Age for you. And
frankly, I don't know why there are still Bitcoin companies in the U.S. I mean, a lot of them have chosen that strategy of just leave the U.S. or never incorporate there in the first place.
Yeah, and you know what's going to happen? Okay, this is what's going to happen. Did you read that letter to the Department of Financial Services that everybody signed, like including Voorhees and Andreessen and Allaire, of course? And I understand what they're trying to do. It's basically trying to buy more time for these regulations.
Extending the comment period, right?
Yeah, to change them. But, okay, I understand you guys are trying to buy more time, but this is pandering. And what's going to happen is they're going to look at it and they're going to meet you 1/3 of the way and give you a little bit of leeway, and they're going to give in a few things. And then, the community is going to go, thank you guys. Oh man, Losky is so, he's so forthcoming and he's not so bad. And the regulation is fine. And, they allow our opinion. This was a democratic process. And then we're going to feel like we won, and it's going to be such a facade, and it's going to be complete crap, and it's just going to be validating our serfdom.
That is, of course, always how it works in the political process. There's always compromises made and dirty backroom deals.
Well, we gave you what you asked for, so it's a democratic process now.
Yeah, I didn't ask for that. And neither did anyone else, really.
Right. It's like if someone's, punching your face and then they punch it a little lighter.
And then you say, oh, thank you. Aren't they nice?
Also, once this happens, I still think the smart businesses are going to leave, and then they're going to also deny service to anybody that lives in New York so that they won't be held liable. And then everyone in New York who's smart is going to put up a big stink about it because they're not going to be able to access, they're going to not be able to access these resources and this technology and the services that are offered via the blockchain because no one wants to be held liable.
Or maybe they'll just move out of New York, or they'll get a VPN or something. So, okay, one more question, Julia. This is a little bit of an abstract question, but I think it's important because there are going to be a lot of people who are listening to Let's Talk Bitcoin who really are not familiar with maybe the word anarchism, and they might hear it and feel really uncomfortable, like, what does that mean? Is that like bomb-throwing, black balaclava-wearing European people? But no, it's actually not. And tell me what anarchism means to you.
Anarchism means that you don't subscribe to the idea that somebody owns any part of you. I think people are autonomous beings, and they govern themselves just fine. And if you think that a collection of human beings is allowed to govern a large collection of human beings, I don't know what's more hypocritical than that. It doesn't make any sense logically or philosophically. I really don't need somebody to tell me what to do. I really don't. So do what you like, but leave me out of it.
Yeah, that's a cool explanation. If somebody comes up to you and steals your wallet and runs away, that's not okay. We would call that theft. If a gang of people comes up to you and steals your wallet, that's still theft, right? But if a gang of people who are calling themselves government and saying they're doing it for your own good take money from you every year by force, is that not theft in the same sense that the robber is also committing theft? And it is. It's just that we don't think of it that way because we've been conditioned to think that government is necessary and good and that they're all doing it for our own benefit.
But Stephanie, that gang was elected by you, by your consent, whether you voted or not, and whether you wanted the choice of those two officials, you elected them, therefore you consented, right?
Well, do I have the opportunity to opt out of that is the question, and no, I don't. Every valid contract, every agreement that's legitimate has an opportunity for exit. And with government, there is no opting out. I suppose you could move somewhere else, but then you're basically just opting into another government, which has its own set of problems. And, there are people who use that strategy, right? They're born in a place that's kind of fascist or tyrannical, or they just don't like it. And so they leave and go somewhere else. Aside from going and living on Mars, Julia, I don't know if there's many places on Earth you can go where you can really, really be free and just totally opt out.
Well, that's the beauty of the blockchain. It creates opportunity for decentralization and choice and diversification. And soon we'll be able to do a lot of things very efficiently without any kind of authoritarian system. That's the most exciting thing to me.
Cool. Well, I think we ought to leave it off there. Thank you so much for joining me today, Julia. It's always a real pleasure to talk to you. You are just so cool, and I really enjoy having your perspective on Let's Talk Bitcoin.
Thank you so much, and I hope your listeners put up with me long enough for me to plug my website.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Tell us where we can find you online.
bravetheworld.com, Brave the World channel on YouTube. I'm on Facebook, but best reach me on Twitter. Harass me, please, at Brave the World.
Cool. All right, Julia Toriansky, thank you so much. And the Bitcoin Declaration of Independence video we will link to in the show notes for this episode.
Awesome. Enjoy it. I hope everyone likes it as much as, well, I had fun doing it.
Are the bloopers in there?
Yeah, the bloopers will be on the same page on my website. And it will be it will be sequential on my YouTube channel. So you can link to it as well separately.
Cool. The bloopers are worth checking out too.
Especially yours.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Content for today's episode was provided by Stephanie, Julia, Adam, and Alex. This episode was edited by Denise Levine and Adam Levine, and music was provided by Jared Rubens and General Fuzz. See you next time.